We're going to be discussing hand quilting today using Aunt Becky's finger protector, which is a tool for underneath the quilt designed to protect your fingers, and its nice side effect is that it makes smaller, more even stitches. I am going to use a dark thread so that you can see the stitches. But ordinarily when I quilt, I like to thread a whole bunch of needles in the morning when my eyes are fresh, and then I just take off one at a time as I need them throughout the day. It works very well, and it's a fun tip. Using about 14 inches of thread, I've threaded the needle with a dark thread, and we're going to make a quilter's knot. So I bring the end of the thread, it's nice and curly, up behind the needle in an X, hang on to that thread and grab the loop, wrap it 3 times, grasp that wrap between my thumb and finger, and pull just like I'm taking a stitch. You'll always have the same size knot, a nice tiny one, and it's ready to go. You'll notice that I'm left-handed, so for those of you who are right-handed, this will be a mirror image. I start by resting my thumb on the logo of Aunt Becky's and placing it over 2 fingers. I push up with it and move it back and forth. You don't want to rock it, because rocking it defeats the purpose and it also invites carpal tunnel. So we're going to work off the ridge. And there's the ridge. I begin by resting my needle where I want to begin. Actually, to start. Let's anchor the thread first. So I start about 1/2 inch away from where I want to begin, and bring that little knot to the surface of the quilt and pop it through. If you see a little bit of thread still showing, you can just take the needle and slide it under and twist, and that will bury that knot. This There's the ridge. I rest where I want it to go in and pull away from the needle. That makes it go in automatically, and when I feel it strike metal, I push back. I pull away and push back. Pull away and push back. Rest my needle where I want it to begin, pull away, push toward the needle, pull away, push toward the needle. As I said, one of the nice side effects of using Aunt Becky's is that you get nice even stitches, and that's the most important thing. It's more important than the length of the stitch. Rest the needle, pull back, push forward, pull back, push forward. We tell our students that the answer to every question is it all depends. So we're asked various questions about hand quilting. People ask me what size needle I use, what kind of batting to use. All of those things are important. But the answer is it all depends. I personally prefer a size 11 needle. Quilting needles are betweens, and they range in size from 8 to 12, 8 being the largest, 12 being the smallest. As they get smaller, they also get thinner. So a 12 is very thin and very short. A size 11 needle is a hybrid. It's the diameter of a 10, but the length of a 12, so it's a stronger short needle, and that's my preference. But don't let anyone tell you that you have to use a tiny needle to get tiny stitches. It just simply is not true. My sister, who quilts with me, uses a size 9 needle, which feels like a harpoon to me, but a lot of people prefer that over a shorter one. You'll notice that I quilt from side to side, but a lot of people like to rock. Now I'm pushing. Rockers stand their needle up, and Aunt Becky's goes in front of it, and you control everything with your thimble. So I bring the eye of the needle down to the surface of the quilt. As soon as I see the tip of the needle, I stand it up again, and I went too far. That's what happens if you push too far. You get a larger stitch. When you're rocking with Aunt Becky's, you don't have to stand the needle all the way back up again. Aunt Becky's compresses the fabrics together and makes it easier to quilt. So you stand it up to begin, bring the eye of the needle down, back up, down. So essentially those are the two methods of quilting, either pushing your needle or rocking your needle. In order to use Aunt Becky's when I'm rocking, I slid Aunt Becky's over one finger instead of on two, and you can see why. If I'm going to quilt toward myself and I have it over both fingers, I would turn my wrist and suddenly my elbow is up against my body and I'm all contorted. But if you just slide it over one finger, your wrist is still straight and you can quilt quite comfortably. Side to side, it's over two fingers. Remember that we are going back and forth, not rocking. We don't want that carpal tunnel problem. Been there, done that, don't need to do it again. There's the ridge. Push back. Go back, push forward. Go back, push forward. Like anything new, when you begin, it will take a lot of practice. And one of the things that we did when we first learned how to use Aunt Becky's was to take a needle and thread with no knot and just do a muslin piece like this and work across it and pull it out if you're not satisfied with it. Lou exaggerated the stitch when she learned how to do it, so she pulled back a long way, and you'll notice that makes a big stitch. And pull back again, pull forward, and by doing that you can get the technique down and then just yank it out if you're not happy with it. A lot of quilters keep a practice piece like this handy when they're working on a big quilt so that they can warm up, just as a pianist would warm up with scales in the beginning. In order to knot off at the end of a row, we're going to take the needle and go in between the layers and come up about ½ an inch away. And now I'm I'm going to make a little French knot just like I did at the beginning. That's what that beginning knot is. The needle will actually follow the thread back down into the same hole. Excuse me. And come up again. There's our French knot, and we can pop it through the surface. It's now buried back here and is not going to work its way up to the top. I have enough thread here that I can continue on, so we'll knot it again behind the needle, wrap it around 3 times, grasp that wrap, and pull the needle out just like we're taking a stitch. And there's our nice tiny little stitch. So we'll find another spot here. Come up about 1/2 inch away from where we want to begin. Pop the knot in. Slide under, and there we have it. I can see the ridge. Rest my needle on it, pull back, push forward. Pull back, push forward. Pull back, push forward. Lots of practice and your stitches will be smaller and more even. Just remember that they're pretty as long as they're even, so don't worry too much about really tiny stitches unless you're planning to work in hand quilting competition. Then you need to work your way down to really tiny stitches. But if they're even, they will look nice. Back and forth, back and forth. Aunt Becky's was invented because the woman who invented it got blood poisoning in her fingers from constantly pricking them. And you can see I have no pricks. I don't have to wait until my fingers heal or I develop a callus in order to continue quilting. Okay, let's say we were in a spot where we needed to go somewhere else, but that somewhere else is further away than our needle is long, so you can't just slide your needle under there. I want to go clear over here. So I'm going to go in between the layers. I'm not going to pull the needle out. Twist that around. And there's the eye of the needle. So very carefully push that up through the fabric. Come on, cooperate. And again, I'm not quite where I want to be. So I'm not going to pull the needle all the way out. I'm going to twist it one more time and come up in my new spot. I've traveled from here to here and haven't had to knot off. It's a great way to move around inside the quilt. So we're going to go back and forth again and start a new row. One of those all-depend questions has to do with batting, and I'm using a nice thin batting here because it's easy to needle. And that's what I like to start students out with. It's called Thermore by Hobbs. But there are lots of wonderful bats on the market today, and you can experiment with different weights and different types. There's silk and wool, combinations of both, and they're wonderful to work with. Just remember that it takes lots of practice, and you want to work across until you're comfortable with the technique. Aunt Becky's under your thumb, just remember that. And remember to move back and forth across the quilt. Becky always said at the end of a session, happy stitching painlessly. And that's what we want for you. Use Aunt Becky's quilt to your heart's content, and you'll be ready to quilt all day long.